Ever since I could remember, my sisters have always been buying what I thought then weird clothes from weird stores. My two older sisters, Salima and Cami, were always into fashion, from trying to make pants out of canvas to reading any fashion magazine that they came across. One day, I went with them to a vintage store. I was amazed at all the lace, frills, sequins, and prints that decorated the room. The jewelry counter had dozens of intricate bracelets and brooches, all very eye-catching. After watching my sisters try on piece after piece for what seemed like hours, I started to get bored. Then I started going on a blog by a 12-year-old fashion blogger named Tavi, and ended up reading all her archives. I started going on other fashion blogs, Sea of Shoes, Moo Hoop, White Lightning, and Style Bubble. I noticed that the bloggers went to vintage and resale stores a lot too, saying that their newest purchase was from Goodwill or other resale stores. After a while, I realized that doing something you actually enjoyed could be also good for the environment too. By buying used clothing, it helped reduce production and wasting precious materials.
My name is Sydney and I'm an employee here at Desert Vintage. Vintage can be anything from the 1920s through the 1960s. Having an inspiration from another era. Here in Tucson we have great vintage, partially because it's a retirement community, and the people who are the past eras that we look up to for their style, have resided here, and so therefore 1930s, 40s, and 50s clothing is to be found.
I buy pretty much everything used except for my underwear and my food. It's definitely gotten more competitive to find the cool things, and they're more sometimes overpriced because of things like eBay and Craigslist and stuff like that, but I still think it's great because the more people that reuse stuff and buy vintage things, the better. This is something that people have been doing in third world countries forever and in poorer countries forever. It's just a smart way to use what's already there and available. And I like the historical quality of owning something that someone else has loved and used already in the past. I think that that's really kind of soulful and cool.
My name is Nina Boufelfel, and I go to University High School. My definition of vintage clothing, I guess it's because I'm from this generation and I'm in high school, but anything prior to the 80s, I guess. 90s is a little sketch, so yeah. I think it's the recession, because I've noticed that a lot of new thrift stores are popping up, and unfortunately vintage is kind of expensive because it takes money to maintain old clothes and to find them and buy them. So I don't think there's necessarily more vintage shops, but there are more used shops where little old ladies are donating their clothes so you can get vintage even though it wasn't necessarily intended. And I haven't been letting myself buy clothes recently. I've just been using my mom and my sister's clothes more. Are those Tom's, by the way?
Yeah. My name is Boufelfel. I work at Buffalo Exchange as a buyer. I specialize in vintage clothing and jewelry. New garments are made every day, and with these large like fast fashion stores like Forever 21 and Urban Outfitters, they're able to pump out trends like every other week. And then you have a bunch of new clothing that's going to go out of style in like a month, and then they're going to get a new shipment in from God knows where, and like, who made it, where did it come from, how ethical was it.
As the years went on, my family was starting to become more and more environmentally conscious, mostly on my mom's part.
Vintage stores or resale shops, anything that we can buy used and reuse or repurpose has a huge benefit and a huge impact on preserving the environment, and supports the whole movement. Because when we're living in a country where we're using so many resources at the expense of other people, that now we have climate change refugees that live in areas where people on the move who have lost their homes to floods and to famine and to drought. That's a direct result of our consumerism, and it becomes a responsibility of every individual to act to make sure that that doesn't happen.
These days, being more environmentally conscious has already become a habit for me, like bringing bags to the grocery store or air drying my clothes instead of using a dryer. Being environmentally friendly doesn't always have to be a black or white thing. There are many ways to do it, like buying vintage clothes, for example. You just have to be creative.